Hello everybody, welcome back to another Weather Central forecast. Hope you guys are on a fantastic day. In today's forecast, we will be going over that major severe weather outbreak. I do apologize for such a late upload, but I was very busy today, so I didn't have enough time to make this video earlier. So like I said, I do apologize. But this is looking to be a fairly strong event. It has, the potential for this has really increased for parts of the South Central over the last couple of days, or I guess I should say the last couple of hours. Going into like the 2 o'clock update or the 12 o'clock update, for the Storm Prediction Center. They did issue a slight risk for a more broader region, which we will be going over in this video. But I do want to start with a disclaimer that these forecasts are my opinion. They are based off of model guidance and past occurrences of weather. For the most accurate and up-to-date weather, please consult your local National Weather Service office, as it will have more accurate and up-to-date information than I will on these major United States weather events, just like this one. I hope you guys do enjoy this forecast. Let's go ahead and go over to my outlook. So, obviously, there is tornadoes possible with this event, like I mentioned earlier. But in this red here is where I'm just expecting a general thunderstorm risk. You guys know how this already goes, how I make my maps. Red is the general thunderstorm risk here. Maroon, you're maybe some isolated severe thunderstorms, some maybe isolated hail and wind damage. But overall, you should stay fairly, fairly safe in terms of severe weather. Once you get into these purples, you're really going to want to start to, really have a plan for these tornadoes. This is where, the highest tornadic probability is. Obviously, take my, forecast with a grain of salt. We will be going over the Storm Prediction Center's tornado probability, which is a little bit different than mine. It's a little farther eastward, which I will be going over as well in this video. So in this purple, like I said, I think you have a decent chance of tornadoes, but in this, western Dixie Alley here, this is where I'm expecting your worst severe weather to occur, just because of those high Cape values and less of that capping up in the atmosphere. We can go into a sounding in just a little bit once we're going on that composite reflectivity. I can show you guys what what I'm meaning by that. So let's go ahead and go over to the models. So here we are with the Storm Prediction Center's 4-day panel for today. You can see a general thunderstorm risk in this lighter green here. And then as you get into these darker greens here is where you have your marginal risk issued, which is where you could still see some of those severe thunderstorms. But generally, you should stay fairly on the lower end of the severe side. And then once you get into this slight is really where you're going to start seeing that severe weather pop up, as we already have been seeing tonight, where we do have some severe thunderstorm warnings up into Nebraska and down into Kansas, with some in Nebraska. Yes, I know for sure one in Nebraska that does have tornadic potential, which will be making its way eastward as the night does occur. We can see a general 2% tornadic probability for these areas in the green shade here. So if you guys are in any of these regions, have a plan in case you guys do get those tornado warnings. In any area surrounding within 50 miles, still could even see some tornadoes. Just that is that highest concentration right there, and it is a fairly low threat for tornadoes as it is. So don't expect too much in terms of tornadoes, if at all. Looking at the hail outlook is pretty much, it is actually the exact same as our wind outlook. You can see in this green here is where you're seeing a 5% chance of hail damage. And then as you get into your slight risk here, which would be your 15% chance, is where you're seeing the 15% chance of hail damage. And then same thing over here with the wind damage. In this green, you're looking at a 5% chance, and then once you get into these yellows, you're looking at a 15% chance of wind damage. So this is where it really starts to get interesting. This is tomorrow's categorical, I should say, 4-panel outlook. You can see we have a general thunderstorm region for most of the central United States, extending northward and southward, and into parts of the northeast here, and that has stayed pretty consistent over the last couple of days, as some parts of the northeast there could be seeing a general thunderstorm risk. As you get into these darker greens, you're looking at that marginal, and then as you get into these yellows here, you're looking at your slight risk, which is where you can see your greatest chance of severe weather. Now, please take the Storm Prediction Center's forecast with a lot more confidence than mine, as they are trained meteorologists and I am not. So in this green here is where they're predicting a general 2% chance of tornadic probability. Anywhere surrounding this in the white is a 0 or less than 2% chance. In this brown here is where you do have that 5% chance, and that was the difference from today's 4-panel outlook, was there was not that 5% layer on top of that, which if you guys are in this 5% chance layer, please stay very weather aware into tomorrow, even tonight into tomorrow, as you guys could see those possible tornado warnings pop up, scattered throughout your areas. Moving on to the hail outlook, you can see here 5% chance in the green here, and then a 15 in this yellow here. Same difference same story here with wind damage. 5 in the green and 15 in the yellow, and those line up for the same regions, as that is kind of how those plots work when they do go over how or where they predict the worst will be. They generally use their slight risk, or their highest risk of severe weather. Usually does get that highest chance of wind and hail damage. That's just kind of how it works with the Storm Prediction Center. So now we're going to be looking at the composite reflectivity. We are going to be using the NAM3K model just because it is still fairly high res and accurate, but as well as we do get out to that 60-hour limit rather than that 18-hour limit given by the HRRR. So you do see there actually is some thunderstorms firing up here, which is what the NAM3K isn't showing, but it is showing some cells off to parts of Kansas into Kansas City, Missouri, which is happening right now. Those will press off to the east. And we're going to get some moisture diving down into later tonight, and that will be supporting those strong thunderstorms later in tonight. You can see as we move this frame on, we already have a nice line of thunderstorms developing just east of my line there. And you can see we might have some possible supercells embedded throughout those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and take a sounding for this area up into parts of south central Nebraska. So here we are with our sounding here, and I'm no ways a meteorologist. I could be saying some of this wrong. But from what I know, where you see this yellow dotted line here, which you guys will see better once I erase that, the distance between that line and this red line here is our CAPE. And so you can see down here, our surface CAPE is around 1,500 joules per kilogram, which will definitely allow for that, severe weather to occur. Our precipitable water values stay at 1.29. So let's go ahead and round that up to 1.3. That is still... it has a decent amount of moisture with it. Our critical angle is at 71 degrees, which really you want that close to 90 degrees as possible. Our lifted index is at -8. That is supportive enough for these tornadoes to occur. You generally want that below -4 as a general, starting point, and then as you get, past -6, you really start to want to, keep an eye out for that. In terms of capping, -64, that's a little high compared to what you would want. But still, that will, those thunderstorms will be powerful enough to break through that capping. So they still will be able to produce tornadoes if that does occur. Our supercell composites are at 11.3, with our significant tornado perimeters at 2.4. So generally, this is a decent sounding if you guys are wanting tornadoes. It's not the best by any means, but it's, it's still it could produce a tornado given with some of these factors here. Our shear is pretty good. Generally, you want your surface shear to be a little bit higher, but overall, pretty decent sounding in terms of tornadic development. So we are back here on our composite reflectivity. Where I did go over that sounding was right here in the darkest part of that cell there. So we'll move this on. Sorry about that. Did not mean to move it that far. So you can see we do get those squall line thunderstorms develop here. What's really going to be scary is if you do get some cells just east of this squall line there, or just some isolated thunderstorms as they develop, because usually those supercells get all of that strength as they are being isolated rather than being in that big squall line. But it still is possible for those supercells to develop on that squall line and then move off away. You can see we have some very, very strong thunderstorms extending from central Nebraska all the way down to central Kansas here, and these will all have tornado producing capability. However, it's not too likely as we only had that 2% chance of tornadic development. Some very, very strong cells, though, some very HP supercells possible. Even though it is a low-end tornado threat, you could still see some supercells. You can see some very strong precipitation down into northern Kansas there. That moves off to the southeast here, and we're going to get a decent amount of severe weather lining up for parts of the Ozarks into parts of southeastern Kansas into northeastern Oklahoma into northwest Arkansas there. We'll move this on. You can see we get some cells popping up from the north here as we are getting some of that moisture digging down from the north there, and that's really going to join up and cause some strong cells at times and the capping layers up into the atmosphere was a little overdone yesterday on the models. So that was, kind of making our confidence a little lower that there would be much tornadic, probabilities for areas around here. But that capping did decrease overnight. So, there is still a chance of tornadic development throughout parts of the Ozarks down into Arkansas, down into Oklahoma, up into Kansas. However, it's still only at that 2% chance. You're right on that line between that 5% chance, which lines up around there, I do believe. So still, you have a really slight chance of seeing those tornadoes. However, it's still possible. You can see some of these isolated cells on the back end of the front here. As these initial cells move up to the northeast, up into the Chicago area, you still do have some precip lining off to the west there. And then eventually that, you will have that, since it is associated with the low, you will get some of that thunderstorms, moving backwards a little bit as this low does try to move its full way off into the Midwest there. Moving this on, you can still see some of those wraparound thunderstorms. However, most of that convective available potential energy will be used initially on, those cells that we did see fire up throughout these areas. So there won't be much CAPE, so it might just be rain showers toward the back end of this system. So before we do in this video, we are going to look at the surface-based CAPE here. You can see we have some very, supportive CAPE here. And you can see these thunderstorms that were off to the west did use up all of that CAPE very quickly. So that is showing that these will be strong thunderstorms, as the trend will be for thunderstorms to use up all of that CAPE. So very strong thunderstorms, especially if we're seeing, 1,800 joules per kilogram. If that storm is using up all of that instability, you have some very strong thunderstorms on your hands. Anywhere in these, yellows here, you could see anywhere from, just shy of 2,100 joules per kilogram up, I guess I should say exceeding 2,000 joules per kilogram, which is more than supportive enough for these, strong thunderstorms to develop. You can see we get some very high concentrations down into parts of Oklahoma. The saving grace is that you will not have any precip lining up in Oklahoma, so your threat stays, really low. To even, possibly no threat at all, just very high CAPE values, because you won't get that precip to move down up into Oklahoma. If this precip did, even though it's not going to, like I said, don't be, scared that I'm saying this, what I'm going to say now, but if you did get that precip down, if it was a typical event, you guys could see some very bad storms, but since you aren't getting that precip down there, your threat stays really low. Moving this on, you can see that CAPE is really dying down on the NAM 3K here. You can see practically no CAPE gets its way farther down to the southeast, and I think that is an outlier, as most of these models are showing CAPE lining up down here, and that is why the Storm Prediction Center did issue that 5% tornado chance, as well as a mixture of that, low capping up into the atmosphere with wind shear and helicity and vorticity, all of that good stuff. So overall, very, you're going to want to stay weather aware throughout tonight if you guys are in any of these areas that I'm going to circle here, even extending off to portions. Let's see here. If you guys are anywhere in this shaded area here, you guys are going to want to stay weather aware tonight, as you guys could get some very bad thunderstorms and or supercells and or possibly isolated tornado warnings. However, I think it is that threat stays fairly on the low side, as does the Storm Prediction Center agrees with that as well. So that is it for this Weather Central forecast, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.